Welcome to Nasdaq Trade Talks. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq. Joining me is Ruth Crowell, CEO of LBMA, the preeminent standard-setting body for the global wholesale market for precious metals, to discuss trading data and trends in the gold and silver space. Ruth, it's great to see you as always. Welcome back to Trade Talks.
Thanks so much for having me here, Jill. It's a pleasure to be back.
And Ruth, let's talk about some updates to gold and silver London Vault holdings. Explain to the audience why precious metals investors monitor this.
Sure. So in terms of gold holdings, these are up 0.6% up April and May. So they've recovered from a little dip they had the previous month. And silver has an increase of 1.6 month on month. This is actually the second highest recorded holding since we started publishing the data. I guess your question about why investors look at this, we tend to get two main questions from investors. The first is about ESG, which I'm happy to talk about later. But the second is about how well backed are these asset classes. So the main questions they want to know, certainly from an OTC trading basis, as well as for those ETF investors whose holdings are physically based in London. And as you can see from our numbers, there's ample supply and they're very well backed. So that's the main driver there.
And Ruth, let's review gold and silver trading data.
So in terms of the gold market, it had been hovering for about 10 weeks from the beginning of March, about $1,700. And this is primarily driven by good news on the vaccine, good economic data, as well as the stimulus package. This all changed pretty dramatically the second week of May. And this is when the US April Consumer Price Index was published, recording a 60% increase month on month. This was the biggest rise in that index since 2008. And I think has thus sparked a lot of concerns about inflation. So there's been a push to gold. And at the moment, we see an average of about 1880 over the last 20 trading days. So this is driven certainly by the US, concerns about inflation, but also on the other aspects, gold buying in Asia. So similarly to the West, people have saved some money if they've been working from home and not been able to travel. And they're also maybe thinking in terms of, if I'm not going to spend it now, when? Lots of luxury good purchases. And in particular in China and India, gold is top of that list. I think you may have also seen some activity in the palladium market, which has been getting a lot of headlines. And it's similar in terms of one of the drivers there. So there's probably two main drivers pushing the palladium price at the moment. One is in terms of exactly this, car purchases. You've seen the UK demand for cars go up it's basically sixfold. And you've also had a challenge on the supply side with one of the major producers in Russia. I think this month they're down to 40% capacity. So big supply and demand pushing that price. But interesting in terms of lots of activities across the space. If I turn to silver, this has definitely been an exciting metal to watch this year. Even though the price is back to its January levels of $27.36, it's had some real highs and lows. So that $27 mark is up 14% above its 31st of March low. And also, if you have a look at the graph we've prepared, you can see the price in terms of as it's gone on the black line, but you can also see how the OTC volume follows that price. And so you see the 31st of March low there with the price and what's happened on volumes, but you also see on the 31st of April what happened in terms of the silver squeeze. And I think we spoke last time because there was a lot of activity on Reddit. There was a move from GameStop into the silver market. And this resulted in two enormous days of trading on the 1st and 2nd of February. You had 1 billion silver ounces traded each day. But the reason I point to the chart is one of the interesting things is if you look at the types of products that are traded. So spot is obviously up very high, but actually you see on the 31st of January, after the news has been clear that it's gone from GameStop to silver, there's a spike in terms of options trading. So traders preparing for what is expected in terms of the activity on the 1st and 2nd. So just a little bit more granular detail that the data can bring you and other investors.
And Ruth, how can viewers access LBMA data?
So variety of ways. You can obviously go to Nasdaq directly, Bloomberg, Refinitiv, and if you want a little bit more digestible info, as what I just said, we did a webinar today on LBMA webinars, looking at some of these things in a bit more detail. So for commentary, also have a look at our site.
Great. And can you give us a quick overview on where we are with BASEL III, NSFR, and HQLA?
Absolutely. So I said we've been getting two main questions from investors about ESG and about holdings, but I would say in the last month, almost every meeting I have is also asking about Basel III and what's happening there. So I think if you didn't know that gold was a liquid asset class, 2020 definitely proved the case. And this is where gold behaved very similarly to what was happening in the 10-year US Treasury bond market. When other asset classes were having trouble and people were needing to get cash to cover positions, they were going to liquid asset classes such as gold, such as US Treasuries. Now, the problem is with Basel III is that this legislation was drafted after the financial crisis in 2009, but there wasn't the available trade data, which shows the case in terms of real numbers to back up gold as a liquid asset class. So it's something LBMA has really focused on, trying to educate regulators as to the case for liquidity. And in particular, with this new data, asking them to reconsider at an international level gold as a high quality liquid asset. In the meantime, while that's being considered, we have rules coming into place which we believe are a risk to the gold market, and also just not tailored to cover the risks that were intended here. So we're monitoring that and also looking to reach out to regulators both in the EU, because their rules come into place end of this month, as well as the UK, which come into force on the 1st of January.
And Ruth, in the last minute here, tell us about the LBMA Responsible Sourcing Program.
Well, the big news here is that we have a new standard and are consulting on it now. In 2018, we expanded the guidance to include ESG issues. And this version, we're really trying to take that to a new level. So we're really wanting to hear from investors and all stakeholders as to how do we do? Are we addressing your concerns? There's also a lot of other feedback points that we've had when it comes to human rights, trying to eliminate gold laundering, as well as a demand for more transparency, which are big parts of the new guidance. So our ask is really have a look at it. Let us know if we're getting there. If there are questions, please feedback. And this is part of our commitment in terms of an industry call to do what we can in terms of raising the bar of our standard, but also still calling on national authorities and other industry bodies around the world to work to eliminate gold laundering, as well as support for vulnerable artisanal miners.
All right, Ruth, appreciate the insight as always. Thanks for joining us on Trade Talks. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq.
Thank you.